Yeah, 2/3 of North America. Exactly right.
When we do the math.
Are we doing this?
Dragon tells the story
Yeah.
of the Mexico Bandito
This is the
was it?
dragon. The dragon
cartel infused.
Tale of survival.
Yes. Action.
Tale of survival.
La Ensenada de Fury.
Well, so I guess to preface the whole thing, it was basically just a climbing trip that I've been on, that I've lost count on. Like, probably over a dozen times. Same route I've driven, more than a dozen times. And I was taking with me a brand new to El Potrero Chico climber who I'd climbed with a few times, named Brad Ray, and a guy that I've known from climbing in the coffee shop down the street named Steven Decker. And we decided to take a trip down there, and it was very run-of-the-mill. There was nothing about the trip that was like exceptional. It was just in my mind, I was going to keep it kind of run-of-the-mill because I was the most experienced guy, so in my mind, I'm in charge. So now I have to do all the planning. I have to do, if anything goes wrong, it's on me.
So it was fucked from the get-go.
So really, step one, it's all wrong. So the 21st, we left a little later than we wanted to, but I had to teach at ACC, so the class ended right at about 6. We all got together around 6:30, 6:45, and we're on the road around 7. So definitely later than you want to be for a roughly 7.5-ish hour drive into Mexico. And so we're driving at night, already ill-advised, but it was uneventful. We make it all the way down to EPC and have just 3 full days of like amazing weather, amazing climbing. Did nothing but the classics. Like we went to the Wonder Wall and did like Ramsey shenanigans, and we did Estrellitas and Will the Wolf Survive, and we climbed the spires, the Aguja, and just an epic trip. Very safe too. That was the best part about it, is especially being like the guy on lead, the guy in charge of all the wraps, and the one I'm constantly thinking, what is the pitfall that's about to like eat our rope? Nothing happened, and so it was just a nice trip. And so come Sunday morning, 25th, I was excited to get on the road. I was like, let's get on the road, let's get back to Austin, and just get back to daily life. And so we left at about 9 in the morning from La Posada, and so utterly uneventful on the tollway. And so we make it from the tollway onto the first portion of Highway 2. If you're familiar, if you've ever made this drive to the Columbia crossing, you know this little stretch of Highway 2. And so we made the turn onto Highway 2, and there was lots of semis. For some reason, there's a lot of semis on this trip home. And so in one portion, there was a bunch of semis, and then a really slow-moving Ford Expedition. Is it an Expedition? Yeah, I think it was an Expedition. And in the left lane. So I passed in the right and then passed all the semis. And so as I passed all the semis, I got back in the right lane, and a couple minutes go by. Mind you, I'm just chatting with Brad. This is just a very work-a-day road trip. We're talking about whatever you talk on a road trip. And so we're driving, and I notice that out of sort of my peripheral, someone has kind of come up on us and is now kind of pacing the truck. And so most of the guys here probably have that sense of you never want to be side to side with a car, so instantly it kind of catches your attention. And so it caught my attention, and I kind of, out of the corner of my eye, noticed he wasn't passing, he wasn't driving back, he was pacing for sure. And so I look over, and I'll never forget the look on this guy's face, because he was doing that kind of thing where he was not just looking at us, but his whole upper body was kind of turned at us, and he wasn't glancing over. He was sort of like watching my truck to drive. And so he had this big kind of like jack-o'-lantern grin on his face. Like he was just this kind of, he had a real pinched nose that kind of upturned, and he had these like kind of gross teeth, and he was just smiling at us. And it was just this like, oh, okay, that's not good. And so I kind of keep the conversation up and mentally telling myself, just be calm, just be cool, it's probably no big deal. And so he keeps pacing for about 20 seconds go by, and I look back, and he's still just like he hasn't broken eye contact. So I'm like, all right, this is bad. Like I need to pay attention to this. And so traffic kind of moves normally. There's some semis come up. I kind of accelerate, get in front, pass. He starts to kind of drop back. I'm starting to calm down a little bit, like, okay, maybe this isn't what I think it is, and so, and I start to accelerate, but I'm like, let's go, like, let's push the pace a little bit. So, so a few minutes go by, and he's now kind of dropped back behind some of the semis, and I'm like, okay, like, just be cool. It was just a weirdo Mexican, you know, nothing to worry about, or at least, you know, pay attention, but don't panic yet. And so, so then I come up to some more slow-moving semis. I go to pass him, and as I'm passing these, kind of glance up in the rear view, and like the Ford couldn't be more on my bumper. He's literally on the back of it, and so then I'm like, okay, this is bad. This is really bad. So now I basically accelerate, like, I'm gonna go. Like, it's time to go. And so I accelerate, move around the semis, and he's still on me. He's dropped back a little bit, but now he's flashing his brights, he's flashing his lights, and I realize, like, this is officially a situation. And so now I actually say something to Brad. Now I'm like, hey, just be advised, man. There's a car, and I'm pretty sure he's messing with us. I don't really know what to think about it, so just heads up. And so he's now kind of alert to the situation, and the guy's, again, kind of up on our bumper and back a little bit and up on our bumper and still flashing his lights. And so so I'm basically floored in a 4-cylinder Tacoma, which means I'm going about 86 miles an hour, and he's right on me. Like, I can't drop him. It's not going to happen. And so actually, a key piece of this story too is I'm driving. Brad is in the driver or passenger seat. We're both belted in, and Steven is in the camper shell. Like, he is laying on the platform that I have. And so right as this is all going on, it kind of clicks in my brain, like, Steven's in trouble. Like, we're all in trouble, but Steven is completely unsecured. Like, no belts, no straps. Like, he is essentially sitting in the back of the truck. And so it pinged on my radar really early, because I knew if this was going to go sideways, like, his spot is the worst. And so so as I'm trying to accelerate out of this situation, the Highway 2 stretch is pretty abandoned. Other than truckers, there's not a lot of vehicles, period. It's pretty desolate. And so coming from the northbound lanes is like a white PT Cruiser, like a probably early 2000s PT Cruiser. And I don't think much of it until he sort of jumps this, like, maybe pavement's a little uneven. There's only about a 3-foot median. He jumps it and is now across the 2 lanes of highway, and like that was it. Like, switch flipped in the brain and was like, this is on, this is happening. And so Brad also kind of acknowledges, like, this is on. Like, and weirdly, to break my arm, pat myself on the back, like, the Steve McQueen and Bullet mode just switched in my brain, and I really didn't realize I had the driving skills that I had. So I see this guy pointed across the highway this way, so my instinct is to just, like, go, like, essentially jump the median and go into oncoming traffic, because there's no one over there. So I jump the median, and now I'm going full tilt in oncoming lanes. And so so we're going, and the PT Cruiser and the Expedition are kind of on each other, and they're now kind of pacing us. Both of the vehicles can go faster than mine, so and they're kind of accelerating, moving back. There's 4 guys in the PT Cruiser and only 1 guy in the Expedition. The guy in the Expedition, though, you can see the barrel of the shotgun. Like, there's like maybe 3 inches of a shotgun, and kind of where the pump is. And so, and Brad calls that out. He's like, Brad said, he's like, there's a shotgun. So right away now it's like, all right, this is bad. And so and there's 4 guys in the PT Cruiser, and the driver's got a balaclava on, and the guy in the back seat has like another sort of like mask on, and they're screaming and pointing, like, pull over, stop, and of course, you know, like, no, like, that's not an option. We're definitely not stopping. So up ahead, we only make it maybe a couple miles, and up ahead is kind of a pull through where you can do U-turns, and so they punch it and kind of come around, and they both block, like, the road and sort of the gravel next to it. So it's like now it's pretty impassable. So I lock them up and do just this kind of like sliding, skidding turn, and so now I'm going southbound and back into Mexico, and now it's a chase. So now there's the two of them, and they're kind of coming up alongside of me. Same thing. I'm hesitant to hit them because I don't want to escalate anything. That's my mindset. Is like, don't escalate anything. If something's going to get escalated, let them escalate it. And so they're coming up beside us, and they're throwing bottles on the truck. One guy threw a dinner plate, and it shattered on the side of the truck. It was very strange. They're yelling at us to pull over. And so same thing. Like you see a guy with like a balaclava on screaming at you to pull over. It's like definitely not. And so. Chase is going on, and we again only make it about a mile, and there's a car coming northbound, jumps the median, blocks about half the road, and driver jumps out and he's got a clay potter for a plant, and he like tosses it into the street, and it explodes, and there's about like a dozen of these little like fist-sized welded nails, like it just goes. Like these little like tumbleweed tire deflation devices, and so I kind of like try to swerve a little bit. Like I realize I'm going like 80, so if I go off the road, I'm gonna lose control. So I'm like, I can't go off the road, but I'm gonna try to maneuver around these. And I am officially a spokesman for BFG, the TK2s, man, because I hit in the process of this whole thing, I probably hit a dozen of these things. Nothing. Didn't puncture the tires, nothing. And so blast through that and am doing okay. It slows the other guys down because now they have to go pick them up so the rest of the cars can go through. And so that bought us about 20 seconds. And so, but I mean, it turns like into this is a horror movie because at about 20, 30 seconds, another car is like another trap car blocks the road, smashes another pot, more tire deflation devices, and blasts through that one. And so by now we're I think there's 4 cars in. There's 4 cars, and this guy's got a walkie. And so at this point now we realize Brad saw the walkie and was like, this is bad because they're communicating with each other, and they have what seems to be a plan. It may not be a very well executed plan, but they're executing a plan. And so. And we're of course in just sheer panic at this point, and so we blast through that one where he breaks the things, and I go right over the little things, and so we keep going. Just not each interval we're talking, is maybe a minute, and so this time now 2 more cars kind of come and block. They're blocking the road, so I lock up the brakes and like jump the median back northbound. And so now I'm going back northbound onto where they'd already kind of thought about that in our blocking the northbound lanes. And so I lock it up again, go back on the southbound side, and Brad and I are kind of weirdly calm at this point. We're kind of discussing like what should we do. I'm telling him like, man, get the phone, see if we can raise the police. And it was kind of at that moment we realized neither one of us really knew how to call the police in Mexico, which is fascinating. And so, but that was neither here nor there because neither one of us had a signal on our phones. And so during all this, Steven still hasn't stuck his head through because the slide. You can open the sliders. He has not.
You guys have a porta potty?
He has not opened the sliders to go. What is happening? And so I'm impressed at his sort of like he's on his own. He's on his own trip. Like, and I've said that by the end of this, like Steven got the absolute worst end of this deal because I mean he's bumping around back there sliding. I cannot imagine how scary it was in the back of the truck.
Was he doing a recreational trip back there?
So I mean, he must have, because he's back there by himself, and he hasn't said anything. And so then it was sort of this evident sort of like the walls closing in, like the roadblocks were becoming kind of closer. I'm getting more desperate. I'm going like, the speeds are, well, since it is getting closer, the speeds are lower, so I'm now going like into the ditches and out, and I think I had the most off-road ready suspension and vehicle, and so So they weren't super successful at stopping me because I would just go off-road and through the ditches and gravel and would get out. And so, so we're now discussing, like, what do we need to do? And I'm thinking we need to be around people. Like, the only things out there are these, like, huge industrial centers with, like, big semis. And I'm like, we should go into one of those. Like, there's people there. We need to get into one of these. And Brad's like, nobody's going to help us, man. Like, this is our problem. Like, nobody is going to help us. And I'm like, but at least there are witnesses. Will be humans to say, yeah, there was something happened. I don't know what happened, but my thought is just be around humans. And so, I as we're passing one of them, I lock them up, and we start to slide into the driveway of one of them, and I realize there's this, like, 12-foot steel gate, and it's like, no, like, that's not going to work. And so, then punch it again. So now we're still headed southbound on 2 at this point, and the only probably civilized thing out there is an Oxxo, like a 7-Eleven, like a Mexican 7-Eleven. And there's a little taco shack there. There's probably 4 or 5 guys at the taco shack, and there's maybe 2 cars parked at the Oxxo. And I'm like, that's it. That's what there's people. I can see them. So just as I'm about to pull in there, though, there's 2 more trap cars, and they're shattering the little tire deflation devices, and they're all over the highway. I blast through them, jump the median again. Now I'm in the parking lot, like, sliding to a stop in this little 7-Eleven, and one car immediately kind of boxes me in, and one car kind of hits the rear left wheel, and I think for a second, like, I'm like, this is it, like, we're boxed in, like, we're done. And so I'm kind of mentally trying to figure out, like, what's the next step? What are we going to do? And I glance in the mirror and I realize no one's behind me. So I slam it into reverse, punch it, and I just kind of slide right out and punch it back towards the highway. Because Brad is kind of like, you know, no one's going to help us, man. Like, we've got to keep going. If you have good tires, just keep going. And so it's like, okay, well, we're about to find out if the tires are good. So we're back on the highway now. But this sort of interlude into the 7-Eleven has allowed most of the cars to kind of, like, set up. And so now there are, like, cars to the right, cars to the left. And so we're probably 7 cars in, 8 cars in at this point, and maybe 15 people, 16 people. And so I bounce it back onto the southbound lanes and try to get around the roadblock, which they shatter. One guy comes running out, and, like, right in front of my truck shatters one of those things, and I just am like this is it. Like, I turn hard into him, go over this guy, like, literally, like, watch him go under my front left wheel. And because, like, mind you, now all of these little metal tines are here, there's a car here, and it's like he is standing in the only open area. And so I'm like this is it. And so go over this guy, and that was when the first gunshots go off. And so I hear this, like, pop, and I start to see out of the corner of my eye, I see people running, and I'm like, those were definitely gunshots. And so I didn't hear anything hit metal. I don't know if it was in the air or what, but I basically, now I've escalated. I've made this essentially like this is life or death for them as well as me. And so this is it. Like, it's a full tilt run. I'm thinking if we can get back to the tollway, there's federales, there's the Fuerza Civil, like, there's military guys with 50 cals, like, get to the tollway. And so now the PT Cruiser and a white Acura, I think from the picture, I can't quite tell, it looks like an Acura, are now just shooting at us. They blow out the back glass on the camper shell. One hit the tailgate, one blew out the tail light, and they're shooting at us, and bullets are flying. And so same thing, like, again, my mind is flashing to Steven, because he is laying down on the box as bullets are now flying through the truck. And so
have you verbally communicated with him?
Not yet. Like, we still can't. Like, the slider is closed. He hasn't made any attempt to open the slider. He is just back there, like, dealing with the situation. And so, and of course, of the 3 of us, he has no training. Like, he has no actual training to deal with any of this. And so, that's what I'm thinking. Like, he's just gripped. He is literally just gripped. Just doesn't know what to do. And so, So Brad and I are discussing this, like, you know, make a run for it. Let's go to the tollway. That's the last place we saw police. And it was at this point that I remembered. I think it was Jake who gave me the combat tomahawk, and it is behind the passenger seat little magazine holder. And I discussed this to Brad. I was like, hey, so if this comes down to it, it's like, are we doing this? Like, is this a fight to the death? Because I have this thing, get it out. If you really think, this is it, this is the last stand, then get that, because we'll need it. And he's like, well, wait, let's just, let's stay calm here, let's think about this for a second, and, let's take it easy. And so I'm like, okay. Again, nice having someone who has, a warrior mindset of, let's just evaluate this from afar before we start making these decisions. And so, so we make it to the big sweeping turn. If you remember that, the big turn that you make to where it stays on 2, but you make a turn that seems like an exit, and it becomes more of a nice highway. We immediately see a couple semis. And before we got to that turn, let me take a step back. There's 3 cars kind of looking like a convoy, moving very slowly, and Brad's like, get to those cars. And so I pull up alongside the first one and start waving Policia, Policia, Yamate, Yamate. And they're just kind of they turn and look at us and are just kind of nodding and looking at us, and that's it. And so we're like, okay, no. So gun it, go to the second car, same thing. And I said, roll down your window, start screaming Policia at them, Policia. And same sort of reaction, kind of this, these white guys are just kind of yelling at me. I don't really know what to think about that. And so same thing, go to the third car. And they didn't even turn to look at us, because we've slowed down now, and we've allowed a lot of guys to catch up. And so the third car, we were just just go. And so make that turn. Immediately there's a semi right there, which in hindsight could have helped us out, because he could have helped block traffic a little bit. He has a radio. But at the time, we just shot past him, because I'm thinking, get to the tollway, because again, I remember seeing the Federales there. And so so now we're floored, and Brad keeps telling me floor it. I'm like, dude, it's a 4-cylinder, it is floored. And so by now the guys who were shooting at us in the Durango have dropped back, and the Acura is right on us, and it's kind of seemingly calm now, because they're the only ones behind us, but they're right behind us, and nothing's really going on. Nobody has rammed us really at this point too. That was a weird thing that I thought, that I expected there to be more sort of demolition derby. It was not. It didn't really seem to be any sort of car-to-car contact. And so, but of course through all of this, I don't really know, because that whole, Brad said afterwards that in that whole gas station interchange, we got hit a couple times that I don't even remember. And so, and of course he didn't hear the gunshots, until the glass exploded. He didn't know they were shooting at us. So, so we got this Acura on us now, and we had discussed that they were going to pit maneuver us prior to this, but now it looked like it was a clear setup for a pit maneuver, which is, of course, where the trailing car comes around the lead car, and just all you got to do is bump the rear end, because at high speeds, which this was probably 85, 87 miles an hour, you're going to lose absolute control of your rear end, for sure. It's going to happen. So I tell Brad, I was like, hey, I think this is going to be a pit maneuver. And so then it was literally 3, 2, 1, and they came around and just bumped the rear wheel, and that just unlocked the rear end. So now we're just we're spinning on the highway. We're going backwards for a second. We make it a little bit past 180, and then it grabs, and the truck basically goes airborne and is now rolling through the air. And same thing, I only really remember 1.5, but Brad remembers 2.5. And his sort of lucidity through this whole thing was incredibly impressive. And so we come to rest on the roof. And so again, as soon as the rear wheels unlock, my brain goes instantly to Steven, and I'm like, Steven is dead. There's no way we can be going 85 miles an hour and lose control and Steven be okay at all. So so same thing, I kind of remained conscious through the whole thing, and end up on the roof, and there's that second of kind of like self-check, like, am I okay? And I'm thinking, like, I guess I'm okay. I think I'm okay. And Brad immediately pulls off his seatbelt and is out of the truck. Like, within 3 seconds, he's out of the truck. And I'm thinking, like, do that, So on the seatbelt, and I try to get out of the window, but it like crushed the A post, and so there was only a gap like this big, and so I'm like, my brain is now, I've lost like all frontal lobe function. I'm just literally like, get out of truck, get out, but it's like I can't like fit my body through, and so I'm like, well, go that way, and so I kind of like crawl backwards out the passenger side window and realize there's already like probably half a dozen guys. 6 or 8 guys are already there. And so Brad said that when he got out, there was already 3 or 4 guys there. And so and they immediately started beating on him. As soon as he came around the back of the truck, they just, one guy kind of foot swept him and took him to the ground. And I come around and I see them just kicking the shit out of him. And so there's probably 2, he's kind of like, there's the highway and then a grassy embankment and then the ditch that we're in. And he's kind of face down on the embankment, and he's got his arms out, and then they're kicking him in the ribs and in the head, and so he's kind of like starts to cover up. And I'm just kind of in a daze, and I come around and I see one guy next to the highway that is, he's got a pistol, he's got a Beretta 92. And so, but he's not really paying attention to me, he's paying attention to Brad and the other guys. So with like literally no decision at all, I just like walked up to him and just grabbed the pistol, and I have a pistol in my hand now, and like there's just a second before I think 2 or 3 guys kind of converge on me, and there's a struggle for the pistol, and instantly remember in different training events that when there's a struggle for a gun, it's gonna go off and it's gonna hit someone, and probably you. And so I just dropped the pistol, and right as I'm about to drop the pistol, someone hit me, and I later found out Brad, of course, because I basically pulled the guys off Brad by grabbing the pistol. All of those guys kind of jump on me, and they're beating on me, and one guy had taken the little short-handled shovel that I had in the back of the truck and just baseball swings on my head, and just like ping, and just opens up the back of my head. And I just thought I was hit. I thought somebody had hit me. And so it was just one of those like sort of moments where now I'm kind of stumbling, and someone caught me in the ribs and in the stomach, and that took the air out of me. And so now I'm just kind of like stumbling, going like, oh, making that noise that you make. And so, but not shot. Like after grabbing the gun, it was kind of like, I'm probably going to be shot now. And really coming out of the truck, it was like, in my mind, there was a moment of like, this is it. Like, it's like this is the Thunderdome, and like, there's only one guy that's gonna walk away. And so, yeah, after like getting whacked, now it wasn't. I don't think I got concussed, but my bell was definitely rung, because I was like kind of like in a daze a little bit. I didn't really know what was going on, and so yeah. So then two guys kind of grabbed me by the arms and started hustling me across the highway to the Durango. And so the Durango's got the back doors open, and they toss me in it, and a guy comes around the other side and gets in. He's got a tire iron, and right away I was like, this guy is about to hit me with a tire iron. And so it was kind of like spring loaded. Like if he raises it, like I'm gonna jump on him, and I'm gonna bite his face. Like I'm gonna fight him like an animal. And so he picks it up and he just holds it. And not much after that, Brad gets tossed in to the Durango as well. And then there's about like half a dozen, 8 pissed off Mexican gangsters screaming at us, like swearing at us. And 2, 3 of them have the balaclavas on, and one of them I remember looked definitely military. Had the balaclava, had the plate carrier with like the gear, the appropriate gear on it. It was dirty. He had a slung AR that also looked kind of well worn, and they're all screaming. The best I could tell was, "Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you stop?" Over and over, they're yelling, "Why didn't you stop?" And I'm looking at them like incredulously, like, what do you mean? Why didn't I stop? Like, are you kidding me? And so, but they just keep yelling it, and then the guy that I ran over comes hobbling up. And he just like leans in and just like punches me right in the face, and he is super pissed. he is about as mad as you'd expect, as if someone had run you over, and is now sitting in the back of a car completely defenseless with his head or his hands up. And so, and it's about this time that I realized too, like I'm like the back of my head's bleeding, so I am like down my neck and my face like covered in blood. My whole shirt is covered in blood, and it's all over my hands and arm. And I start to kind of have that moment of like, I need to do this self-assessment. I need to kind of, am I okay? And so, but again, we're getting screamed at, and another car comes screaming up wrong way on the highway, and the like comic book Mexican gangsters get out. The guys with like the khakis and no shirt, covered like from literally face to chest, all in tattoos and pistols. And it was like right then, it was like, we're about to get shot in the face. Like this is it. Like they're literally going to reach in and start shooting us. And but they didn't. And so as these guys are walking up, everyone, you kind of see this sort of like explosion of panic. There's, mind you too, there's probably, if I had to guess, probably about 20, 25 people kind of scattered across the two lanes of the highway. And so you can just see this instantaneous, like someone yelled police. And so the first thing I think is like, this is the time to bail. Like jump the fuck out of this car and run as fast as you can. I even turn to Brad and I say like, dude, we should run. And his thought, he goes, we can't leave Steven. And that pauses me for a second, like, he's right. But then I think, what good are we to Steven if we are in the same situation as Steven? Like, so I literally start to sit up and reach for the door because everyone's attention is elsewhere. And I managed to grab the door handle. Brad grabs my waist and pulls me back down. And so, and I'm thinking, at this point, I'm like, I'm going to trust your, calmer mindset, because if you think this is the right step, then I'm okay with that. Like, you're a smart, capable dude, so I'll stop for a second. And so, doors slam, cars peel out, and now we're like hauling ass up the highway. We're going north on 2 now. And in this Durango, that's like a 97 Durango that has not been serviced in many years, because the suspension you can just feel is bouncing, and it's one of those like, I'm immediately looking for a seatbelt because it's like we're about to crash this car, because it has that sort of springy, worn out suspension that you can feel at these speeds is going to bounce and roll and spin. So, and of course by now these guys had already, like, the driver is smoking a joint, and the passenger who has a pistol on us is smoking a joint. So we're just kind of like thinking like, this is bad. Like everything about this is wrong. And so I'm just thinking car accident. So there's not one seatbelt in the whole vehicle. So it's like sort of just plastered back to the seat, and like, okay, like if we wreck, like this is it, we're gonna wreck. And so they kind of make some convoluted turns and get away from the scene, and it's calmed down a little bit. So we start talking to him, or trying to talk to him, and asking him like, what do you want? Do you want money? We can get you money. Like, what do you want? And so they're just saying, we're going to see the boss. We're going to see the boss. We're gonna ask him what we're gonna do. And so they take us back near where the sort of initial encounter happened, and we kind of just sit there. And same thing now. Again, there's like 8 or 10 gangsters just screaming at us and screaming at why we didn't stop. Why didn't you stop? And so we're just like, lo siento. And so, like, tenemos miedo. And so, so same thing. A couple of more guys come in and like kind of punch us in the face and in the stomach, and but not in a weirdly sort of like, I want to hit you, but I don't know if I can kind of way, because they obviously at this point they could have beaten us or killed us. And so, and most of the shots were these sort of like, I want to hit you, but we're waiting on the boss. And so a later model SUV pulls up, and a guy gets out who, he's got a balaclava on and like what look like designer jeans and like a striped polo, and he's got like a brand new plate carrier. He's got one of those like what looks like we tore the tags off plate carrier, and he's got like a duty belt with walkie on it, and he's got a slung like old AK. And so so he comes up, and everyone kind of chills out and backs off. And so he starts saying, first thing he says, like, why didn't you stop? And it's like, because we were scared, man. Then he starts asking us like, how many people are with you? Like, and we're just like, well, there's. And the one thing, I don't know if you caught that, but only Brad and I are in this car. We don't know where Steven is. In fact, as we peeled out and went, I was just like, Steven is dead, man. Like, Steven's dead. And he said, no, I saw him walking around. He's okay. So Steven, to take a few steps back, because this is a part of the story I forgot. So we lost control, flipped 2 times in the air, and Steven was ejected at 85 miles an hour in the back of the truck. So he went. And the best I can figure is that when the truck was rolling, he was ejected at like a lateral sort of parallel to the ground angle, because he basically said he just sort of slid to a stop. And so, and literally stood up and started walking back to the truck. And so he said he saw my arm sticking out when I was trying to like get out of the truck. He said he saw my arm. And so, so they hustled him off to another vehicle. And it was about this time that the Jefe rolled up that they kind of piled him into the Durango with us. And he was, of course, visibly just like, I'm so glad to see you guys. We're just like, we're so glad to see you. And so, and really amongst the 3 of us, there was a weird amount of sort of calm, and we had sort of, there was a sense of humor about the situation, which was very bizarre. And because it was so surreal. Obviously, every second of this is so surreal. And so the Jefe's smoking a cigarette, asking us questions like, how many people are with you? Are you American? Where are you from? These questions that are really confusing. And about this time, a 25-ish-year-old kid comes up who speaks pretty good English. And so he starts translating more or less. And so we are kind of like looking at him, and so the Jefe snaps our pictures. He has like 3 cell phones in his hand. He snaps a picture of Brad and I and Steven, and then walks off. And so there's this moment of kind of calm, and everyone's chill. And they almost seem to be kind of like relaxing, because they start again like rolling more joints. One of them had wheat cake, and they were passing out pieces of cake. And so I kind of like turn to the guy who speaks English, and I'm like, what is happening, man? Like, what is going on? And he says, he's like, well, we thought you were taking people across the border, and like, this is our territory, so we thought you had people in your vehicle. And we're just like, we don't have people, man. like we don't have drugs, we don't have people, like we don't have anything. And so he's like, okay, yeah. And so the Jefe comes back, and he speaks some Spanish, and just ultimately in broken English says, you're going home. And so, and I'm obviously super dubious of that. I'm just sort of like okay, sure. I don't know what that means, but whatever. And so the plan of like what we're going to do starts to get discussed, and I'm only catching little bits of it. And it sounds like they want to take us back to the truck. And so we're kind of like, just take us back to the truck, man. Like, take us back to the truck. And they're saying things like, you didn't see anything, you didn't hear anything, you had an accident, you were drinking a little bit and you had an accident. And so we're like, yes, we had an accident, like, let's just go back. And so we start to go back, and then they start to kind of slow down. We're like, well, what's going on? And he says, there's police there now, and we can't take you back. And we're like, no, man, just drop, like, let us out right here, we'll walk back. And he's like, no. He's like, if the police are there, there's bullet holes in the truck, like, they're gonna know something happened. And so we're like, they've been there, man. Like, I live in Texas. Like, the bullet holes have been there for years. And so he's like, no, like, we can't do it. So we have to wait until the police leave. And so now it starts like that dark engine in my mind of like, they're just saying, we're going to let you go to keep you calm. Because I'm thinking like, we're kidnapped. Like, we're kidnapped. They're going to ransom us to our families. They're going to torture us, whatever. And so, because the story keeps changing, and now we're driving around outside of Nuevo Laredo. And so we go to kind of another little gas station. We park for a little bit. They actually go in and get us water, because they're like, you guys want some water? And we're just like, yes, please, take some water. And so so they stop, and they're like, do you guys want anything to eat? And we're just like, no, we're good. Like, just some water is good. And they're starting to be more and more nice to us, because I think they've really realized that we're just 3 gringos, and like, this is bad for them as much as it is for us. And so so we're kind of hanging out in this parking lot. They're waiting for the police to leave. They start to realize after maybe we've been in the car for maybe about an hour now. They're realizing the cops aren't leaving, so we start driving again, and we're asking them like, where are we going? And they say like, well, we can't take you back to the truck. Like they keep telling us like, you're going to be arrested if we take you back to that truck. You are going to get arrested. Like the way the Mexican police work is, if you are involved in some sort of like shootout, you're a bad guy. Like period. That's the answer. And they said they're going to arrest you, take you to jail, and then beat you until you tell them why you're involved in this. And so, on the one hand, that was weirdly, soundly logical. Like I was kind of like, I actually believe you right now. Like I think that's the case. And so, their solution was to take us into Nuevo Laredo, like kind of on the outskirts, and we're like, we're gonna take you to a place you can get a taxi. And so. And they gave Brad his passport back. They gave Steven his passport back. They never found mine. So they gave Brad his car keys back. At one point, Brad even tried to offer him, like, I think he had 50 pesos in his pocket. They're like, no, we don't want your money, man. And and they gave Brad his wallet back, which had his license and a credit card. So it's clear that they're not trying to rob us or kidnap us. And so they drive us around kind of like a weird path through a neighborhood, and then we get behind kind of a big box supermarket, and then we stop, and they're like, all right, so go around the supermarket, and there's a taxi stand, and you can get a taxi. And so they're like, go. And so we get out, and there's just like the first 10 seconds of just like, are they about to open fire on us? And we don't. We make it around the supermarket, and mind you, Steven's barefoot. He was barefoot in the back of the truck, and he lost his glasses, so he can't see anything. And I'm covered in blood, like Walking Dead style, amount of blood all over me. And Brad is relatively uninjured. He has almost, other than getting beat on, he doesn't have any injuries. And so we come around the corner of this shopping market, and we start drawing stairs because we obviously look like we do. And so I'm kind of like feedback looped, and I'm like, we've got to get Steven shoes. Like, let's just go in the supermarket. Like, let's get him some flip-flops, man. He needs some flip-flops. He cannot walk around Mexico without flip-flops. And so, and I think Brad had a more zoomed out. He's like, we need to get to the border, man. We need to get out of here. And so I'm like, that's a pretty good idea. Maybe we should do that. And so. So we go to a sign. There's a big sign in front of the supermarket that said taxi. So we kind of walk over there and park just past it is like a four-door Ford. And a lady's putting groceries into it. She's probably like 55, 60. And she kind of like, she's putting the groceries in, and then she kind of looks up and sees us and just kind of walks around and is like, are you guys okay? We're like, we just need a taxi. And she's like, well, where do you need to go? We're like, we need to get to the border right now. And she's like, well, get in. Just get in. I'll take you to the border. And so... we get in the truck. It's only apparently I had lost track of where we even were. I didn't realize we were only about 10 minutes from the border, and so it was a silence, a very palpable silence in the truck. Man, we were all kind of like just we were free, but we weren't really free, and we knew we couldn't go to the Mexican police because we knew it's like if we called them and like one of their guys responded, then we would probably be in a lot of trouble. And so we were just like, get to the border. So we get to the Puente and kind of start trying to find our way. People are like, no, go that way. We're just like walking to the bridge, and we get to the point where there's like these turnstiles where they want like 4 pesos to cross the bridge, and we have nothing. We have literally nothing. We're like, and we try to kind of like just walk through a gate, and the guy's like closes the gate. He's like, no, like pagas, and so we go to the window where there's a guy giving out change, and we're like, dude, we don't have anything. We just got beaten and robbed, and we have nothing. Like, we just need to get to the United States. And of course, he's visibly annoyed and goes to get his supervisor. And then we're standing there for maybe 5 minutes when another American couple walks up, and they're just kind of like, oh my God, like, are you okay? And we're like, we need 12 pesos to cross this bridge because we need to get back to the U.S. And oddly enough, the guy is holding like a wad of pesos in his hand. He's like, I don't have 12 pesos. And I'm looking at like 1,000 pesos in hand. So it's like, you guys are useless. Like, never mind. And so, so by now the supervisor came out and saw me, and I'm like just covered in blood. So he's like, we don't want any part of this. Like, yes, let them cross the bridge. And so we start crossing the bridge, and by then the American couple had kind of caught up to us and was like, hey, you might have a head injury. And it's just like, yes, you're right, I might have a head injury. And so she's like, I know Spanish, I can help. And so she kind of runs in front of me and starts kind of ice breaking this probably quarter-mile long line of hundreds of people. And so she's, discúlpame, doctor. And so, and of course people are turning and they're seeing me and they're kind of recoiling because I'm like just covered in blood. And they're absolutely cool with me going past. And so we make it through the myriad of people to the front of the line, and same sort of reaction from the Border Patrol. These 3 Border Patrol guys couldn't be more bored and annoyed at our situation. And
Did that too help?
And yeah, exactly. I'm sure it did. But they're very what is happening? Like, clearly you've gotten yourself into something. Like, what do you need? And so I'm just like, I need to get to the U.S., man. I need medical help. And so they're kind of like, yeah, you probably do. And they look to Brad and Steven and they're like, you guys are okay. You need to go to the back of the line. And they're both just like, no, we're not going. We're staying together. And they're like, no, you're going to the back of the line. Like, do you have a medical problem? And they're like, well, and it starts to escalate where the guy is like kind of getting in Brad's face now. He's like, go to the back of the line. And so, fortunately, another guy kind of walks up and is just like, whoa, like, let's just call the supervisor. Let's get him down here. We'll figure out what's going on. U.S. Border Patrol. It's U.S. Border Patrol, yeah. And so, supervisor walks up. He's got like some oak leaves on his shoulder. And the first thing I notice is that he has unholstered his taser and pulled the cartridge. And he's just kind of standing there with his taser. And I'm just like, I'm in disbelief. I'm just like, you seriously have a taser unholstered at this moment right now? And so now we've drawn like maybe 6 or 8 Border Patrol guys plus this guy. And we start to kind of tell them the story. And they start to slowly realize, like, we were truly victimized. We weren't, like, in a bar getting wasted and causing trouble. Like, we were just victims of this whole thing. And so, so they were like, okay, well, follow us. And so they lead us through these sort of, like, chain link mazes. And we get back to where their kind of, like, office is. And they're like, so, and now the chief has shown up. And we have, like, the chief of the watch is asking us questions. He's like, okay, so... we have a protocol where we have to call Homeland Security. They have to fill out a border violence report, and so you guys have to kind of hang out here for a little bit. They've gotten a lot cooler. They brought out a big first aid kit and snacks and water.
Can you patch yourself up?
Yeah, literally, it was just kind of like tossed us the first aid kit, and they kept asking, like, do you need EMS? And my cantankerous reaction was like, no, we don't need an ambulance, man. Like, my heart's beating and I'm breathing. We don't need an ambulance. And so,
at any point, did you say, like, what you guys did? Did you say, like, hey, he's APD SWAT?
Oh, well, yeah. By now, we had kind of identified ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, he had said, like, my name, Brad is like, my name's Brad Ray. I'm a robbery detective with the Austin Police Department. He's a paramedic, Williamson County. And yeah, so they are, but, people say, we're not showing them ID. Yeah, so I'm sure people say stuff like that all the time. So, so same sort of thing. They're still kind of keeping their distance, but they're getting calmer and cooler with us. And so
Stephen makes a really good cup of coffee.
And so yeah, he really does. He really does. And so we sit there for probably 2.5 hours waiting for Homeland, and they're kind of chatting us up, and they're telling us all sorts of stuff about how the reason they didn't hurt us was because that would very much like call down the thunder. Like, that's kind of what happens whenever there's crazy violence. The federales and the military kind of like inhabit that area, and so it would disrupt their business. And so they were like, they wanted us gone so they could keep the business going. And so and they were also talking about how the violence is escalating, but nobody's talking about it because any journalist that reports it is murdered, like instantly murdered, not warned, not beaten up. Like, they are like murdered and disappeared. And so so apparently it's getting really, really dangerous around the border. And so it specifically said that stretch of Highway 2 is like, we don't send anyone on that highway with like a security like envoy. And so so then Homeland arrives and gives us kind of like they debrief us and ask us a bunch of questions, and they're very much like, listen, we're not going to arrest anybody. Like, it's a foreign country. There's no way we're going to find these guys, but we're gonna work hard for you guys, you're American citizens. And they're super nice to us and really, really cool guys. And So by this time, Brad had sort of offered. I thought we would just go buy a bus ticket. Go to the Greyhound station, buy a bus ticket. But Brad's like, my dad will come pick us up. Like, do you think, should I call my dad? And I was like, well, we can get bus tickets. I can't imagine make someone drive 4 hours one way to come get us. And he's like, I'm calling him. And so in fact, the Border Patrol offered us, like, do you need a ride to the hospital? And so we're like, actually, like, a standalone clinic will do. Like, I think I just need some stitches. And so they take us to a standalone, which actually turned out to be like kind of like a freestanding ER, because they had CT. We all got CTs. I got stitched up, and cared for pretty well. And so, just as we're wrapping up with all that, Brad's dad pulls up, and we catch a ride back to Austin. So. So really, like, besides the 6 stitches and like my neck is definitely cranked. Like, no real physical injuries.
So who took the picture of the...
Exactly.
Yes. Picture of the truck.
So that kind of starts this sort of convoluted inner story, because the first federale to show up on this scene is a, like, straight as an arrow TJ Hooker cop, and like secured the scene, and is like ran off the looters and was like, no, this is a crime scene. And so he immediately starts to kind of dig through the wreckage and finds my ID. And my ID has an Austin address. So he, because he's a good cop, calls Austin PD and says, hey, I have a truck with Texas plates and an ID of a Texas resident and no Texas resident. So just to let you know, here's his name, here's his information, do what you got to do on your end. And so he snaps a bunch of pictures and sends them to Austin Police Department. So so those pictures came from that guy. He sent them to, there's a sort of a resident DEA narcotics detective in APD who's more or less like a liaison. And that guy gets them to, I want to say, so by now, Brad has called his sergeant to be like, hey, I'm not coming into work tomorrow because... And he starts to tell the story. And he's telling the story, and he's like, no, I'm serious. Like, no, I'm serious. Like this, we were in Mexico. We were, chased, and so somehow this narcotics detective and Brad sergeant it got dispersed pretty quickly, I think, within APD, and they got in touch with each other, and so that the sergeant then texted Brad's father's cell phone, and so he starts sending us pictures of the crime scene, and so that's how I got a hold of like pictures of the scene, and so then this sort of spun up all these things where the federales called like the State Department and said, hey, I think we have a kidnapping here, and so the State Department calls the FBI, and now Homeland is calling FBI, and so the Homeland guy's like, hey, you may want to expect calls from FBI and State Department and the consulate, and so that was how those pictures came about.
When did you tell Naya?
I called her basically when they were leading us through these chain link fences, and we were chatting with the chief. The chief was super cool, and he offered his personal cell phone. He's like, do you guys have anyone you need to call? And I was like, and I kind of looked at the guys. I was like, I'll go first. And so I call Naya, and she doesn't answer. And I'm thinking, well, she doesn't recognize the number. I'll call again. She doesn't answer. I call again. She doesn't answer. I'm like, well, then she's not by her phone. And so I leave a message that's kind of like, hey, we're okay. Everyone's okay. There's been an accident, and the truck is totaled, and we're at the border, and we're getting help from Border Patrol, and just give me a call when you get a chance. And so maybe about 15 minutes went by. She was in the shower, and she calls the chief back, and the chief hands me the phone. And I kept it pretty vague. I was very like, yeah, there was an accident, and certainly no, car chase, gangsters, gunshots type description. And so that was when.
So they thought you were a Mexican gangster transporting people through their territory.
Yeah, there's basically I'm a rival coyote,
yeah,
and I'm not paying taxes, and they were gonna like make a lesson out of us.
Should have just stopped.
So
why didn't you stop? Why didn't you stop?
Is that the takeaway for the Paterno Chico people?
Well, but that's just it. I don't know if there is a takeaway.
Well, yeah.
Because I know I went down there. I started going down there in 2009 when this stuff was happening like every third day. And I was like, it's not going to happen to me. It won't happen to me. I don't need to worry about it. I'm a dirtbag climber. this is not a thing I need to worry about. And so, and then it happened. And so
you're a dirtbag climber with a canopy and shadows moving around.
Well, that's
Steven in the back.
Exactly.
I think they saw Steven
Exactly.
and was like, okay, so that's obviously a red flag.
He's so fucking lucky.
And so,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
I think.
So what happened?
I mean, you're also lucky.
So he's
It's
fine.
upside down.
He literally
It's amazing.
he has some like road rash on the outside
Oh
of
my
his knee,
God.
and some like more or less like I said, road rash on pretty good road rash on one knee.
He's living right, whatever.
But yeah, no, again.
He's got the Bible in his hand.
Well, that's what I told him. I know in our
Fly through there.
profession, we talk about ejections, especially high-speed ejections. Is basically you can flip a coin, and if it lands on heads, you live. Lands on tails, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's if you live or die. Like high-speed ejections are multiple broken bones, like multi-systems trauma, like usually spinal cases because you're flying through the air at a high rate of speed and your neck is super wobbly. And so really his story to me, if there's the scariest story, Steven's story is I would take my place again if we had to do this again.
But you took somebody's gun from him.
I know.
That's pretty
It was literally. That was just it. That's why I say Brad and I have had training. We've been through moments of brainstem function where flashbangs are going off and gunshots are happening and you have to go. You need to do this, and so to me it was just I'm just walking around the truck like a robot, and it was nobody's really paying attention to me, and it was there's a gun, you need a gun, and it was just and I just grabbed it, and it was in my hand before I even really realized what was going on, and so I had mostly just a hold of it by the barrel before I was just essentially dogpiled, and
you did have it.
But I did have it, yeah, and so there was just and that was what brought the shovel down, and
Because
yeah.
at first I was thinking time to start popping caps, but really you're lucky that you didn't, right? I mean, in retrospect, that you didn't, that you only had the barrel. You weren't able to start shooting.
Well,
if you were
yeah.
able to start
It would've
shooting.
gone down there.
Well,
shit
but that
would've-
was just it. Is
You said you dropped it because in that situation, someone's gonna get hit.
because some
Right.
of the training I've done is holding a pistol close
Right.
with people trying to take it away from you, and in every instance I shot myself, and so. So that was it was to me it was holding on to it. I realized this is a terrible idea. Plus by then there were 20 guys. So even if it was a full mag, that would have only made things worse, and I would have definitely escalated the situation. And so yeah, so it was one of those where I was it's just a pistol. Weirdly in this situation, pistol would have made things worse. And so. So yeah.
Have you sold the movie rights? And you haven't?
I know.
I don't think
Now
it's
you
good
ready to
enough.
know that?
You think right now there's a bunch of banditos sitting around going Jose, he took your fucking gun.
Yeah.
I thought that dude was dead.
I
Until you said
I
he came
also
walking
assumed-
back.
I also assumed he was dead. So,
He's probably on the beer bitch duty for the next 2 weeks.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's dude, Jose got his gun taken. He was
who
using more beer.
knows? Who
I was
knows?
also
I
kinda
wonder
hoping
too
they
if
were
the
passing
boss
a joint.
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
a talk with the guys who initially started the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
who saw the truck and went oh, coyotes. The
Yeah.
boss now is
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
because when they took us back to where it all began, I saw the PT Cruiser was wrecked out. It was, the whole front end was smashed.
Wow.
The Acura that pit maneuvered us, I don't think I sent you guys the other picture. It also rolled. It totally.
Oh,
wrecked
they didn't
out.
hit the brakes after they tapped you guys?
Well, but that's just it. Is they did this at 90 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
So think about being in a car and
It's
then
not
doing
gonna
this.
So these were
So-
not professionals.
No,
No, not professional.
yeah.
Were your tires still inflated?
Still like,
I remember looking at those.
Yeah, in the picture.
I
they
remember looking
looked
at the tires
completely
yesterday
inflated.
and thinking, why did he leave those tires behind?
Damn, you
I'm
lost.
telling you,
Yeah.
BFG TK2,
Damn.
10-ply radials.
We're gonna mail
At
this
this point, all your
BFG.
stuff is
Right?
Get a new pair of tires.
So
But do they have foam on the inside to prevent
no,
rust?
they're just steel belted 10-ply, really hardcore off-road tires, and so it helped that my truck is a really small light truck. If I had a F350 Super Duty,
Heavy, yeah.
different story probably, but it's such a small truck that it just rode over them, and so so currently my truck and some gear, according to the consulate, some of my gear is at the consulate in Nuevo Leon. So
If you were great enough to go get it.
So when are you going back?
Well, so the guy from the consulate said, so if you want to go collect your belongings, like we're gonna have the State Department with you, we're gonna have Homeland with you, like, and your job is to not say anything because on their end they're getting the federales, who essentially the federales were caught on their heels. Like, their whole job is to prevent shit like this, and they absolutely failed. And so they, according to them, on their end, they're trying to point to us as like we are coyotes or drug runners, and we just got busted. And so he said, if you do go collect your belongings, then we'll send people with you, and you are not to say a word because they're trying to implicate you. And
How did Kobe put it? Let's go play an away game in Mexico.
Yes. He texted me. He goes, "You ready to go to Mexico and get Drew's truck?" I go, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Call Drew." Actually, don't call Drew. Call Nick. Because Drew doesn't have his phone anymore. And that was how I found out.
So the expedition was following a whole caravan of people being trafficked. Those were the 18-wheelers?
I don't know. Like the possibly.
Because when we were there, like they were stopping us, and we're like, they were stopping random people, and we're like, this is kind of weird. And I
Like
think maybe that was
Federales
on 85.
Yeah. Cops.
Federales?
Somebody.
Yeah, I mean the federales set up checkpoints all the time.